Hello students, today we are going to study the poem Fire and Ice. Now we all know fire and ice both are opposite of one another. So from the line itself, you automatically come to know one figure of speech wherein opposite words are used, and the name of the figure of speech is where opposites are used. Does anybody have any idea which figure of speech it is? Okay, I'll tell you later in the chapter poem. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. For what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Now over here in this poem, the poet uses the word fire and ice. He says that some people say the world will get over in fire. Some people say world will get over in ice. Now what is the meaning of that? In fire doesn't mean the whole world will end with engulfed in fire everywhere. Somebody will light up a fire and it will engulf the whole world. It is not like that. Basically fire over here is desire. The desire of human beings. Now this desire of human beings will lead to such an extent wherein people will become greedy to accomplish their desire, and in going to accomplish those desires they will use any means, crooked means, foul means, even to the extent of going to kill people. So if everybody starts to have such type of desires, then we will say that the world can end because of the desires of the people. And what are those desires? They can be anything. They can be lust, they can be greed, they can be anger towards anybody. And automatically if this thing comes out of all and people start to fight with one another because of those desires, the world will end. Then he further says that from what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. And the poet has a personal experience of desires, how and to what extent that people reached in accomplishing their desires. And he says that yes, I agree with people who say that the world will end in fire, means because of the grease of people, because of the avarice, because of the greediness of the people. That all denotes fire. That is desire of the people. And he agrees, yes, because he also has had first-hand experience of this desire which can lead to the end of this world. This is the explanation of the first stanza. Now we read the second stanza. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. And in the second stanza he says that if the world were to end second time, one time it got over because of the desire of the people, that is fire, and again the world was reborn and again everything came into place, then he says that if it had to get over again, perish is to die, then he says he knows enough of hatred. This hatred is symbolic of ice, which is the name of the poem, Fire and Ice. Fire denotes desire, ice denotes hatred. And he says there is enough hatred in this world that if this world had to die a second time, then even ice would be sufficient enough. Because if people hated one another, today everybody hates everyone. There are many people whom you might not even know, they might be hating you, but they don't come out in open and fight with you. Why? Because they know we all fear the land, law of the land, and that is why we don't bring out our hatred towards people. But we have enough examples. These world wars were examples of hatred towards one another, and it caused large scale destruction. That is why he says that if the world were to end a second time, then even hatred is enough to finish off this world. It is enough and to suffice. There is one word in the end of the poem, the last word, which is suffice. Suffice means sufficient. And he says hatred is sufficient enough to finish this world a second time. So basically both the words fire and ice, which is the name of the poem, are symbolic of certain things. Fire denotes desire, ice denotes hatred. And I had told that these both words are opposite of one another. There is a figure of speech, and the name of the figure of speech wherein opposite words are used, that is antithesis. The poet's name is Robert Frost. He is the poet of this poem, a very great poet. Discuss the question answers from the poem Fire and Ice. Now the question answers which are given over there Basically, they are very easy, and we will discuss a question which is written in my handwriting, the central idea of the poem Fire and Ice. This is the main question of the poem. Now, the central idea of the poem. Now, we have two different views presented over here by the poet, Fire and Ice. He says that the world may end in fire, and he also says the world may end in ice. Now, basically, fire in the poem is associated with greed, cruelty, lust. Ice is associated with hatred, indifference, coldness. These are for ice. Now, he talks here in this poem about first fire. It symbolizes desire. Desire is basically what? An intense feeling of want. You want something and getting it at any cost. This is what fire denotes. Now, our society is also full of such people who want to get things at any cost and simply spend their life working to get a bigger TV, a bigger car, a more stylish car, a big house, a palatial house. Now, these kind of desires can lead to the destruction in the form of, say, suppose your relations will get broken with people, or perhaps you might become bankrupt, that you will spend all the money you have and you will finish yourself off. Now, or you will make new enemies because of your over ambition. These all things can happen with you, and this is basically greed and corruption in the society. That is what fire stands for. And he says, if all the people become so, then this world will end because of the desire and ambition of the people. Then in the second stanza, he talks about the power of ice, that is hatred. He says that just like desire, hatred is also enough to finish this world. But he says that hatred doesn't happen fast. Desire may quickly finish off this world, but hatred will slowly consume this world, and it is also enough to finish this world, because he says it will stay in your mind for a very long time. That hatred doesn't finish very quickly unless and until you haven't taken revenge on the person. That hatred doesn't go away from your mind. Your mind always will remain occupied with that thought, and until and unless you don't do what you had set out for, you won't feel at peace. So, if everybody starts to do so, then hatred will take over this world, and the poet has had first hand experience of hatred. So he says that I have known enough of hatred that if for destruction even ice is sufficient. Ice means hatred. This is what is the central idea of the poem, which you have to keep in mind.